my previous podcast, I discussed the evolution of complexity from the creation of the first complex elements, biogenesis, multicellular life, to contemporary technological society on the eve of the artificial superintelligence singularity. I observed that this process was extremely unlikely. In this podcast, I shall examine the problem of fine-tuning and the extremely unlikely evolution of complexity. This process requires exactly the right values for up to 30 factors that determine the requirements for the emergence of complex elements, life, and cognitive consciousness. They include the requirement that the force of gravity should be 100 trillion times weaker than the strong nuclear force, which forms protons and neutrons and binds them together in atomic nuclei. If this force differed by even a tiny factor, the universe would not have developed as it did, and we would not be here. If the weakest force, the cosmological constant, had been a little smaller than its actual 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, the universe, instead of expanding, would be closed and would have expired before life could begin. If it were a little stronger, the universe would have expanded too quickly, preventing galaxy formation. If the number that defines nuclear efficiency were 0.006 instead of 0.007, the universe would only contain hydrogen. If it were 0.008, all the hydrogen would have fused into helium immediately after the Big Bang, and stars would never have formed. Roger Penrose has estimated that the extraordinarily low entropy of the universe's initial state is vanishingly unlikely, more unlikely indeed than the cumulative unlikelihood of all the other fine-tuning factors. However, fine-tuning might apply not only to the initial condition of the cosmological algorithm, but also to the subsequent unfolding of the evolution of complexity. The unlikely nature of the emergence of life is evident from the probability that despite the existence of exactly the right circumstances on Earth for billions of years, biogenesis seems to have taken root only once. Despite all our advanced understanding of the processes and elements that are involved in the generation of the first life, we have still not been able to replicate biogenesis in the laboratory. Also, despite 4 billion years of interaction between countless trillions of prokaryotic cells, the emergence of eukaryotic cells seems to have occurred also only once. We are all descendants of the first eukaryotic cell. Following the emergence of eukaryotic cells, the further evolution of life depended on the right sequence and nature of extinction events. If these extinction events had not occurred as and when they did, it is unlikely that evolution would have unfolded as it did. If the asteroid that collided with the Earth 66 million years ago was much larger or much smaller, or if it had struck the land rather than the ocean, the outcome might have been very different. Mammals might not have emerged as the inheritors of the world. Chance also seems to have played a role in the survival of our hominid ancestors. It is now thought that around 930,000 years ago, their population was reduced to little more than 1,200 breeding individuals for more than 110,000 years. Our own species had to survive not only repeated glaciation events, but also other cataclysms such as the Mount Toba eruption 74,000 years ago. Human civilization might have been kick-started by the 1,000-year cooling of the world during the Younger Dryas 12,000 years ago, which may have forced mankind to abandon hunting and gathering and to develop agriculture and the domestication of animals. In terms of the anthropic principle, all these extremely unlikely events must have occurred when and as they did, because without them we would not have developed the advanced consciousness required to observe and understand them. If we were to play roulette, and 0 were to come up only 10 times consecutively, we would immediately, and with a high degree of certainty, conclude that the game had been rigged and that the final outcome was the very thing driving the design of the wheel. However, the cumulative unlikelihood of the initial condition of the cosmological algorithm and the subsequent unfolding of evolution is unimaginably more unlikely than trillions of consecutive zeros in roulette every second since the Big Bang. This should not be viewed as an indication of the extreme unlikelihood of the evolution of complexity to the point of consciousness, but as the absolute confirmation that consciousness is central and indispensable to the whole process. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler took the anthropic principle a huge step further. He argued that we are not simply observers of the universe, but are instead participators in its creation. In his view, the universe is a self-excited circuit. It started as a blank slate of quantum probabilities, and only when conscious observers evolved on the timeline could they look back, measure the universe, and retroactively bring its past into concrete reality. The extreme improbability of the evolution of complexity may mean that we may be alone. It is, of course, possible that life might have emerged in other places in our algorithm, because the initial fine-tuning that has resulted in life and consciousness on Earth would presumably have been the same everywhere. Nevertheless, life elsewhere in our algorithm would have had to make the leap to eukaryotic life and pass successfully through all the necessary extinction gates before attaining our level of consciousness. Although some assessments claim that there may be 20 sextillion habitable planets in the observable universe, nearly all of them are in other galaxies, and 99% of them are receding faster than light can ever bridge. Communication with those that are closer would require hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Accordingly, if cognitive consciousness exists outside our galaxy, it is very unlikely that we will ever be aware of it. So far, we have identified 70 planets in our galaxy that may be habitable, although there may be as many as 300 million. However, relatively few enjoy all Earth's advantages. Earth is extremely well suited for biogenesis and the evolution of life. The presence of a very large moon, relative to the size of Earth, has helped to maintain the tilt of our axis and has generated strong tides in our oceans. Earth's active tectonic plates might also have facilitated the evolution of life. The giant planet Jupiter has vacuumed up many asteroids that might otherwise have collided with Earth. The existence of intelligent life on other planets in our galaxy would require successful biogenesis, the unique leap to eukaryotic life, and the successful transition of all the extinction gates mentioned above. It would also require them to achieve the technological development to be able to communicate with us within the same period that we have the technological ability to receive signals of intelligence from them. This period, extending so far for little more than 100 years on Earth, might represent a tiny window for communication. Other life-bearing planets might not yet have reached this stage, or might already have transitioned from it. Our efforts to discover intelligent life elsewhere in the universe have so far produced nothing. The SETI, that is, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project, founded in 1984, has, after decades of searching, found no sign of intelligence elsewhere in the universe. Hence, the Earth may contain virtually all the complexity and cognitive consciousness of which we are ever likely to be aware, and a major part of this complexity may be represented by the information encompassed in human cognitive consciousness, in the lives, interactions, and the pools of information of the 117 billion humans who have lived so far. In this podcast, we have considered the very strong possibility that consciousness may be a central and indispensable factor in the genesis and evolution of the great cosmic algorithm. In my next podcast, I shall deal with the very slow emergence and evolution of consciousness on Earth.